One of the more popular terms that have come from the East is the word karma. In the third teaching, the Dalai Lama explains the Buddhist understanding of the word and shows how deepening our comprehension of karma leads us back on the chain of dependent origination to the origin of suffering, which is the fundamental ignorance at the root of our existence. This, in turn, leads us to an understanding that suffering can be overcome, which is the third noble truth, the cessation of suffering. Karma is mistakenly understood in the West as almost identical to the Western notion of destiny or fate. Most people think it's responsible for what happens to them. They say, it's my karma, or it's my fate. But the Buddhist idea is somewhat different. The central notion about karma in Buddhism is that it is the evolutionary result of an intentional act. Whatever we do with intention has an evolutionary impact on us. Furthermore, every act produces results, some beneficial, some detrimental, and some a mixture of the two. When we trace the effects of our actions, the law of karma becomes intimately connected with Buddhist morality. How should we act in any given situation? It is not something imposed from without as an absolute moral code. It arises out of every situation quite naturally, once we become aware of the workings of the law of cause and effect. How do the workings of karma tie into the search for liberation from samsara, the frustrating, self-centered life cycle? This returns us to the fundamental confusion or ignorance at the base of our existence. From this ignorance arise afflictive emotions. These emotions create negative actions, which produce more suffering and unfortunate karma, which will ripen in the future. It's apparent that the afflictive emotions are a real obstacle that must be removed if we are to approach the third noble truth, which is the liberation from suffering. Another Buddhist term widely misunderstood in the West is anatman, which has been variously translated as egolessness, selflessness, and even soullessness. Anatman is the word used by the Buddha to describe the ultimate nature of reality. It is a synonym of emptiness. It's a very subtle concept, and many Western commentators have used the notion of selflessness to highlight what they mistakenly think is the nihilism of Buddhism. At this point in the teachings, the Dalai Lama lays out the tenets of the middle path consequence school of Buddhism, the Madhyamaka Prasangika, that demonstrates that the soul, self, or I that is being negated is only the notion of an independently existent I, an intrinsically objective I. The relative self is never denied. The relative soul is never denied. The self that exists is therefore not mere nothingness, but a self that, by virtue of its emptiness, is interrelated with the totality of the world. The person who believes that the self is a permanent, separate existence will always see a fundamental division with the world, will always be tormented by the consequences of this division. I and not I, mine and not mine, desire and aversion, love and hate, life and death. Out of this fundamental duality spring all the afflictive emotions and the karmic acts that perpetuate suffering. Ignorance misunderstands the self to be something absolute apart from the world. Wisdom understands the lack of such an absolute self, thus recognizing the existence of a relative self that is related with and interconnected with the world. The Dalai Lama brings home the point that insight into the nature of the self is what the Four Noble Truths are all about.
Oh. Yeah. I'm here.
Lovely to see you. Beautiful.
Yes. 저는 동네 안에 민주신도다 동네 교회야 진중대야 ene dawan de shin du ji de gyu chin ji ma lo ba ji bu ge da du mo tu ya de ene ga re le ba slam na mong ba wang de yu ge ba che mong ba de le ya ene da chu si ran she yun du land la mong ba da ta khona ni lo mong ba se ni mong ba ni shen yu ya re.
So yesterday we spoke about the fact that what we naturally desire is happiness and a wish to overcome suffering. But in contrary to our natural aspiration, often we tend to create more conditions for our suffering, and also we are ignorant of the ways of creating causes for our own happiness. So what we found is at the root of all of this is a fundamental confusion, or in Buddhist language it is called the fundamental ignorance. And this is sort of a state of confusion in relation to not only the way things are, but also in relation to way causes and effects sort of follow each other, and causes and effects relate to each other. Therefore, in Buddhism, when we talk about fundamental ignorance or avidya, we talk about two levels of ignorance. One is the ignorance or confusion relating to the laws of causality, the laws of the karma. And the second one is confusion or ignorance pertaining to our understanding of the ultimate nature of reality. And these two types of ignorance or confusions are related to the two levels of understanding of dependent origination, or pratitya samuppada, that we spoke about earlier. The understanding of the pratitya samuppada in terms of dependent origination, in terms of causal dependence, will enable us to dispel this confusion pertaining to karmic laws or causality, and understanding or deep insight into the interdependent origination in terms of the ultimate nature of reality will enable us to dispel the confusion or ignorance that pertains to our understanding of the ultimate nature of reality.
Tawana, ene tu mari ko chigor beslam na, ta mame ibare. Mari ko the wang le, ene nyomong ba shem manguchi ta yonde yare. Sene ta ngamba ne sumbaina, ene sibeza wa chaje truks, sene tawanga da demingas sene ba chena ene de shebare. Dagana shingi ene
So, however, this does not mean that this ignorance or confusion is the only cause of our enlightened existence. Of course, there are many other derivative causes, which or conditions, which in Buddhist language is sort of technically called afflictive emotions and thoughts, and this is a very sort of complex class of emotions and thoughts, and we find sort of detailed descriptions of these emotions and thoughts in the Abhidhamma literature. For example, according to Abhidhamma literature, there is an understanding that there are 6 sort of root emotions, negative emotions, or thoughts, out of which arises 20 sort of secondary types of emotions and thoughts. So there is a complex explanation of the world of emotion and thoughts.
Nga shung nala ne, ene ene ngo gyawa yinba, yanchi lungma ten yindeba, tindegi ta namdo yang mindawa gyashu sam shisoni rangshin gyashu kundos. Di yang siwa kwa kwayagi du shabari.
And also we find sort of another sort of further explanation of the process of being in an enlightened existence in the Tantric Vajrayana literature, where there is an understanding of what is known as the 80 types of thoughts or conceptions, which are indicative of our being in unenlightened existence.
중국의 중에 포획 박사를 시작해요. 포획 박사, 감 포획 박사, 고양, 고아루야 줄이야.
Similarly, in the Kala Chakra literature, which belongs to the Vajrayana class, there is also a further identification of factors or causes of samsaric existence or unenlightened existence, which are understood in terms of propensities or natural dispositions.
다들에게 에네 녀몽베다 다치다잖아 녀몽베 군중 세아디 디니 레지 군중 세아디 용기여 말이 자다 가다 코아두지 줄이야 레뉴 군중 니셰.
So these emotions or afflictive emotions and thoughts which arise from our fundamental state of confusion and then give rise to, or they motivate volitional actions. So together, the delusions and karmic actions or karma are the origins of our suffering.
다 지단에는 유문부 지천이 그리 시작했을라나 아니 강충나 다 시바 그리시 아니 가다 런줄이 게임도잖아요. 아니 랑준이 강사디 머시워징이 규 머시워징이 라 심주럽도 머시워징이 진짜지리야 심주럽도 머시워 제배 관에 랑준이 강사 녀몽으로 제배지리야 아니 녀몽스라고 말이에요.
Generally speaking, klesha or afflictive emotions and thoughts are defined as that emotion or thought which the mere occurrence of that in ourselves creates immediate disturbance within our mind and then afflicts from within. And that is the sort of general definition of klesha.
다 레지 군중사 레스야디 지다 안다 레스 랜데 세야디 유단 데뷔 다 준대긴 대회 침을지 가산 쉬브는지 거기 랑싱기다 유해되지.
So what do we mean by karma? If that is the definition of afflictive emotions or thought, what is the definition of karma? Here I would like to remind again to situate our understanding of karma within the context of wider Buddhist understanding of the natural laws of causality. Karma is an instance of the natural causal laws that operate within the world, within the universe, or within the natural world, where there is an understanding according to Buddhism that things and events come into being purely as a result of aggregation of causes and conditions. Similarly, karma is an instance of that. Now, the unique feature of karma is that karma involves an intentional action. Karma involves an agent. When we talk about natural processes in the world, although the processes, there is a cause and effect, sort of causal processes operating in the world, but where there is no agents involved, we cannot really talk about karma, because karma needs, in order for a causal process to be a karmic causal process, there is a need for an agency, there is a need for an agent, an individual whose intention would lead to a particular action. And that type of causal nexus or causal mechanism is known as the karma.
저는 다와든 저기 아니 레틀이야 아니 나시기 대부 가서 그게 디지용에 될래야 아니 계획명다 대부 동행해야 될래야 아니 다 디계명다 tene jebu so tanyo de ngel luma deng ming da chene ta le game luma deng le sum shewi.
So within that karmic action, generally speaking, we can talk about three types of actions corresponding to the effects they produce. The actions which produce suffering or pain, suffering and pain are generally speaking considered negative actions or non-virtuous actions, whereas actions that lead to positive consequences, desirable consequences, experiences of joy and happiness, these actions are considered to be positive or virtuous actions, whereas there is a third category of actions which leads to experiences of sort of equanimity or states of neutral feelings or experiences. These are considered to be neutral actions, neither virtuous nor non-virtuous.
다 뭐요관에 마셔 인도선에 샘벨라다 샘벨라 세지. 다 샘벨라스는 군룩되는 셔야지다. 아니 샘벨라스는 다디 이니 룽아고 요아. 드리지 당 뭐요관에 샘벨라스 셔야지. 다야 레 그게다 그래서 레 제번 주세 아니 고요관에 셔야이나 So
in terms of actual nature of the karmic actions themselves, we can talk about two different types of karma. One is the mental karmic acts, sort of actions which need not necessarily be manifested in behavioral or physical kind of actions, but rather they are more like mental acts. Then there could be also physical actions like bodily acts or verbal acts. So principally there are two types of actions. Similarly, from the point of view of mediums through which the actions are expressed or executed, we can talk about actions of the mind or actions of the speech or actions of the body. Similarly, in the scriptures, we also find discussions about karmic actions which are sort of completely virtuous, karmic actions which are completely non-virtuous or negative. Then there are karmic actions which are sort of mixture of the two. So I feel that many of us who practice the Dharma and who believes in the Dharma, perhaps most of our actions may be sort of a mixture of the two.
Any machine nego, jug nego chani. Jong jugsum kita khabarle le top chigu khawa yung yare.
And
le kabu ine le migyo ine kada ni ga lo jawa machine jug dende kita asol bege tengne ene le tuchimbu chaya da ya chi. Bena jawa nego bena le dibur jibe ina jawa nego le ya gunung be shuk chabu jibe ine ya chi julia chi gyawashku shimle be soro.
So if we look at, say, even a single karmic instance of a karmic action, we can see that there are stages within that event. There is a beginning, which is the stage of the motivation or intention. Then there is the actual execution of the act. Then there is one could say, the culmination or the completion of the act. So depending on how these stages are carried out. In the scriptures, there is an understanding that the intensity or the force of the karmic action can vary. For example, like if, for example, in the case of a negative action, if the person at the stage of motivation may have a very strong negative emotion, a forceful anger or whatever, a forceful and negative motive, and then acts out on an impulse, carries out that action, but immediately afterwards feels deep regret for the act that is committed. So that action would be less forceful, because the three stages, the motivation, the actual action, and the completion were not complete, not completely fulfilled. Therefore, that action would be seen as less forceful compared to an instance where the person has acted out completely with a strong motivation, actual execution, and a sense of taking pleasure or satisfaction at the act committed. Similarly, there could be instances where the individual may have a very weak motivation, but some circumstances forces the individual to actually commit the act. But even in that case, although the negative act is committed, but it would be less forceful because the strong motivating force wasn't there. So depending on how forceful the motivation and the actual act and the completion are, there is a varying degrees of force and intensity of the karma.
No, today that really a strong juxene. Did I cover your industry any kasobuge sal macheba, chela masaba, chesa niga town, chesa niga maimba, the shishido.
Because of these differences in the scriptures, we find discussions of 4 types of karma. Karma which is executed but not accumulated. And then there is a karma which is accumulated but not executed. And then a karma where the act is both executed and also the karma is accumulated. And then karma where there is an absence of both accumulation and the actual execution of the act.
So today in the le geve chalaya any gulung da kaso bege shukshan bu yong tuya gulung ya wu che gulung dab da ma che mu shi dube ne ge le cha kang jin ne bege da bege bisun so ba chi da ga ne shin ru le ge wa mo da je su yi rang chi ya en tubna diga la mimi gi jan de chi ya du se ba yin en ge wa da dab shang chi ya 단 미기회 차려야 그저 두두 당분에 지 꾸루 다시 숙타고 마요야 다 아니 바르도 이네 그게 다 개벨랩도 봐 타만 줄이야 이네 간다 개벨 시작점치야.
Once you understand the importance of this point, the significance of this point, and also once you understand that even within a single act there are different stages to the actual act, the karma itself is a composite, sort of a cumulative act. Once you appreciate that fact, then whenever you have the opportunity to engage in a positive action, then as a practitioner, it is important to ensure that at the initial stage, your motivation is very strong, your positive motivation is strong, and you have a strong intention to engage in the act. And while you are actually executing the act, you should ensure that you have given all your best. You have put all your effort into sort of a successful action of the karma. And then not only that, but at the end, once the act is committed, it is important to ensure that you dedicate the karma, the positive karma that you have accumulated or created towards the well-being of sentient beings and your own attainment of enlightenment and so on. And especially if one can sort of reinforce that dedication with an understanding of the empty nature, the ultimate nature of reality, even then it will be more forceful. Similarly, when as a practitioner, of course, ideally one should try to avoid from engaging in any negative actions at all. But even if you find yourselves in a situation where you are committing a negative or non-virtuous action, it is important to make sure that at least the motivation is not strong. There is no strong emotion involved. Similarly, even when you are acting, while you are acting, executing the action, if there is a strong sort of conscience pangs or sort of sense of regret or sense of kind of remorse, then of course the negative act, though committed, will be very weak. Similarly, this should not be followed by any sense of satisfaction. You should not take joy in any negative actions that is committed, but rather you should feel deep remorse and regret, and then immediately you should follow the act by, if possible, purification of that negativity. So if you can do that, if you can follow live a way of life where this is your way of relating to the sort of positive and negative actions, then you will be able to follow the law of the teachings of the karma in a much more effective way.
나 미기회 레 dom국이나 미기회 컨트레스라위나 아니 낭주기 가서 우리가 슝망이 나라네 지웅구송야리야 아니 미기 주본 수능 거를 예송해.
So although there are many different types of negative actions, but in most of the Buddhist scriptures, when the teachings on the karma and is presented, all the negative actions are sort of condensed or summarized in the form of what is known as the avoidance from the 10 negative actions or 10 non-virtuous actions. These being 3 actions of body, and 4 of speech, and 3 of mind. The 3 bodily acts being
social.
Avoiding from, 3 bodily negative actions being killing, stealing, and sexual misconduct, and 4 actions of speech being telling lies, engaging in divisive speech, speech which are divisive, and using harsh words, and engaging in just senseless gossip, and the 3 mental actions being covetousness and harmful intention, harboring harmful thoughts, and holding wrong views. So for an ideal practicing Buddhist Dharma practitioner must live a way of life where the individual avoids from all of these negative actions, if possible from all of them, if not at least refraining from as many of these actions as possible. And so leading a way, ethically disciplined way of life, whereby you avoid from these actions, is called leading a moral life according to the Buddhist understanding.
십계변 안에 아니 선언은 뭐 당분도 봐도 다는 더 버시 타마다 군도 드시는 캐바인 소원은 시전이 다 라린 게도 전에 림바 당고디 당연 두스샤 낭주근 조단디 주주 탈바샤체 주주 탈바샤네 아니 뒤주야 된다래야 뉴몬로다 가서 그게 인연부 때는 뉴몬을 갑대줘야 돼 뉴몬도 탑고야지 난 뉴몬을 깨워 치고요 아래 난 뉴몬을 깨워 쳐발이야 냐라 리시기 팔라 뉴몬을 깨도야 가고리 되는 상황이 있잖아요 뉴몬배 샹왕도 그네 아니 내주 텐데하게 내주들이 고바디 다시 못한 거 시작이 말이에요. 되네 좀 이번에 내주들이 편하게 싸게 교로 진행이 뉴몰을 내못돼요. 되네 좀 수버디 뉴몬 대샤고 파자를 내못돼요. 디시야.
So the general mode of procedure of a spiritual practitioner in Buddhism, someone who is engaging on a spiritual path, towards enlightenment, according to Buddhism, is that at the initial stage, at the beginner's stage, such a person's, such a practitioner's ultimate aspiration is to attain liberation from samsara, to attain freedom or attain spiritual freedom or enlightenment. So therefore, one of the principal tasks of such a practitioner is to gain victory over the kleshas, over our negative and afflictive emotions and thoughts. But at the initial stage, there is no way that the practitioner can directly combat with our kleshas, with our afflictive emotions and thoughts. So the sensible way to proceed at the beginning is to find a way of coping with the expression of these negative emotions and thoughts. These are our conducts, the negative actions of body, speech, and mind. So therefore, the first step towards attaining that ultimate aspiration of gaining victory over kleshas is to guard our body and mind and speech from engaging in negative actions, so that we don't give in to the power and domination of afflictive emotions and thought. And then once you have achieved that stage, the first stage, then you can proceed on to the second stage, which is to then tackle the root cause, which is the fundamental confusion that we spoke about earlier, the ignorance. And then that is that, when at that stage, then you can directly counteract the forces of the kleshas, the afflictive emotions and thoughts. And once you have done that, the third stage is not only to simply gain victory over these delusions, but also to root out even all the propensities and imprints left by these delusory states of mind within our mind, within our psyche. Therefore, Aryadeva states in the 400 verses on Madhyamaka, or middle way, that a true spiritual aspirant must at the beginning overcome negative negative actions of body, speech, and mind, and then in the middle phase must counter this grasping at self or ego, and then finally, in the final stage, then the aspirant should overcome all sort of views that bind us within the samsaric realm.
다데 레지 군주다 용모배 군주스 다니 다데 안다가 레지 군주네 에네 다 나라주 베게다 류르다 다딱 되게 독된셔야 독된 뇌지 독된다 주의 독된스 다도 샤윤드잖아 다데 레디게 그네스 두다데 샤윤드 에네 심매바지가 심매바스 내면도 다 그걸 루부르 질야 레디기 즉 사바지 두세야디에 배지여서 말이 친내이네 나도 난주이네 가다지 거래다 변 풍부균 거래 최대의 년龄이 굉장히 균지 예대시 근데 균디 때문에 아니 디두기 요나서 영향이 아니 다땡 요원도 돼야 돼 변 친내이네 나도 그 동네 장영야 그게 겐싱에게 그 넘버를 돼야다 다른 신기 주지 풍부이네 그 다른 신기 그 디두 체스 다 체지변 디두기 다 요나서 영향이 넘준다면 영향 디디다 렉처 용해 자야변의 친내지 거바디 차샤네 그 타야 또 윤두자네 중앙하다 타도 윤두 스페이스 바트가 도되네 나 주지 풍부도 차샤네 그래야 타야 또 윤두자네 스페이스 바트가 도되네.
So when Buddhism talks about how both the environment and the sentient beings living in the environment are produced, are consequences or are results of this fundamental confusion, the ignorance, and the karma, particularly the karma. We should not have a notion that karma sort of produces these things from out of nowhere. That is not the case. Karma is not like a kind of an eternal cause, but rather we must understand that in order for karma to operate, in order for karma to have the potential to create its consequences, there must be a base, there must be a basis. So therefore, both in terms of the physical world and also our mental world, the continuum is always there. For example, like in the case of the physical world, you can trace the continuum of the physical world to the beginning of a particular universe, and then according to Buddhism, you can trace that beginning even to a stage of empty space, where there is an acceptance of what is known as space particles, although I mean, that's not the the best translation, Namkhe Dul. There is an acceptance of a stage of empty space during which all the origins or the source of the material physical universe is in some sense is contained there. Similarly, in the case of the mental world, so far as the continuum of consciousness is concerned, so far as the continuum of the sentient beings are concerned, this would also include the world of the consciousness as well. So far as the actual continuum is concerned, we cannot say that this is a result of karma.
And body also.
In the case of body as well, we cannot say this. The sort of unending process of the continuity of both matter and mind is not a result of karma. Now the question is, where does karma fit in? At what point does karma, plays a causal role in producing sentient beings and the environment, the natural environment in which the sentient beings live? Perhaps one could say that there is this natural process in the world, and at a point where the evolution has reached a stage where it can affect the experiences of the sentient beings, giving rise to either painful or pleasurable experiences of suffering, or giving rise to pleasurable or joyful experience of suffering. That is the point where karma begins to sort of come into the picture, because karmic process can be made sense only in relation to sentient beings' experiences, be it suffering or be it pleasure or joy.
Pena, ranzu, pena, kiwam, kansa, that kiwsum kansa slona, kansa lag shares slona, mari. Pena number shares at lag shares slona, mari security. Ta mi pumbu dela te mi number shares lag to slona, re kabu keve lag to that does your.
So, for example, if the question is asked whether consciousness is produced by karma,
or being,
whether the sentient beings are produced by karma, it seems the answer should be in the negative, to say no. But if the question is the human body a product of karma? Is the human consciousness a product of karma? Then the answer would be yes, because human body and human consciousness are consequences of positive actions, virtuous actions. Because when we are talking about human body and human consciousness, we are already talking about a sort of a state of existence which deals directly with the experiences of an individual's pain and pleasure. Similarly, if we were asked the question whether this natural aspiration that I spoke about earlier, this natural instinctual desire to seek happiness and overcome suffering, is that a product of karma? It seems the answer would be no.
자 today 뭐 이두산에 다가나식 변화 월다 변화 가설 계획으로 변화 빅방들의 용대하디디 빅방 지기 단 넘줄 컨데지 차다 맞았어야 돼 렉더야 돼. 저당 거라 causality 두스 용대버디 렉 말해.
Similarly, when we think about the evolution of the physical universe at large, yesterday we spoke a bit about the Big Bang theory and its implications for Buddhist cosmology. One could say that, generally speaking, so far as the natural processes of sort of cause and effects in the physical world is concerned, so far as that process is concerned, I don't think we can say that it's a product of karma. But so the process of causes and effects in the natural world takes place regardless of karma. But in what form that process or in what direction that process would lead to, then of course karma will have a role to play.
자, today 뭐 이두산에 그게 가서 그게 먼저 그게 짜바치스들이야. 짜바치스 유들이야. 아니 그게 가서다. 로버도 이 두진지 두의 땡기면 유어친데베 릭직. 다른 거 랑싱기 그 춘익이 거를 여den의 릭직. 야 랑싱기다 춘익이 그게 여den의 소소소리야 투모모인베야 거를 춘익이 하는 느버르지게 여대. 그래서 제그 그게 짜바져서 유들이야. 된듯이 예배 인도산에 아니 아주 그게 제배 고스님 누구 제당으로 들이야. 아니 리버 시고는 제와서는 배지. 다 도선저 용이어서 춘익이 봐. 아니 그래 저시베지고 아니 때베지고 태두기를 봐서네 이것이 배주셔야 될
So what we find here is that in the natural world we find that there are in terms of applying inquiry in terms of identifying the objects of inquiry from the Buddhist sort of analytical point of view, it seems that one could say that there are two sort of distinct types of objects of inquiry. One object or one realm that is sort of, one could say, natural, where only a natural process of causal laws operate. And then one could also speak about another realm of sort of inquiry, where we can then, as a result of these sort of causal interactions, there are certain properties that are emergent, that are contingent, as a result of these interactions. Because of this distinction in Buddhist scriptures, we find sort of discussion of different avenues of reasoning or different avenues of examining sort of analysis when trying to understand the nature of the world or nature of reality. For example, like in Buddhism, there is a discussion of perhaps what could be called four principles. One is the natural principle, the fact that things exist, the fact that cause lead to effects. So here there is an appreciation of a principle that is natural. One could almost say there is an acceptance of natural laws. And then based on that natural principle, then you can appreciate certain types of what could be called the principle of efficacy, how given that nature they have the capacity to produce certain results and so on. So there is, one could say, there is a principle of efficacy. And then we can also talk about another principle, that is the principle of dependence. And given this natural law and the principle of efficacy, we also see that there is a kind of a natural dependence between things and events, between causes and effects. And then there is, based on these three principles, then the Buddhist critical analysis sort of talks about how we can apply various types of reasoning or analysis that would enable us to broaden or deepen our understanding of the natural world. Therefore, the fourth principle is accepted, which is the principle of valid proof. that is based on the understanding of these different principles, the principle of natural principle, the principle of dependence, principle of efficacy, then you can apply various, you can accept a principle of valid proof that given this, that must be the case. Given that, this should be the case.
자, 디데인도 고란다 춘익 내다다 고랑중기 다 그게 고랑 매부 실루디디 셰베체니 디실샤베 타네 아니 다 테두스야지 나로리아 쳔냠는 다 디보봉 겨워두자 다 디날리디도.
So for a practicing Buddhist who is engaged in the Dharma, it becomes important to appreciate these what could be called facts of the natural world. And then once you have appreciation of these natural principles, the natural principle, the principle of efficacy and dependence, then you are in a position to utilize that knowledge to live a life that would accord with the Dharma principles. And therefore, one could say that then we will be utilizing the principle of valid proof, the way in which we can avoid certain negative actions, way in which we can enhance our virtuous actions, and so on.
다원은 그게 패널 드세 나로리아. 그 레기, 다 그게 패널 드세. 패널스님도 다 가다 레기 그게 더 여서 나로리아. 아니 다 레기 그게 누가 하는 수도 거슬라베이나. 이펙트 하는 수도 거슬라베이나. 제가 레슬로도 액션 체니. 배랑 가는 체득이 액션 기겜에 체맥이 뒤돌 저희보다 통세로와. 배랑 나도 액션기 아니 치두 소알단 요르고 이들이 저 세브샤로와. 다 시즈 다가르샤. 프린시플 다가르샤. 데이터네 체니 아니 간다지 다대 자와도 제베 겐기 아니 마음베 뒤돌다 저용되네. 다 되네 봐도 돔ring도 다니. 아니 난기 다다 간다지 치변 난 뇌기 거바디리네리 그러나 난기 기부 그러나 풍부 나다 샤샤네 자자와 아니 중앙내가네 로데기 알바 스단 중앙가 될래야 치 중앙아 난기 중앙아 난기 중앙가래 차라 근데 배지였어요 근데 그 타네는 자와지 튀구면서 sometimes
So the question is, of course, there is a natural world. At a certain point in the causal process, karma comes into the picture. Now the question is, in what sense or in what manner karma affects or interacts with the natural world, the process of the natural causal law. Here, I think perhaps we can relate that to our own personal experience. That from our own personal experience, we know that certain actions that we commit, for example, like in the morning, will have its effect, continuing effect. Even in the evening, it would have created a certain state of mind. It would have had an impact upon our emotion, our kind of sense of being. So even though the act was committed in the morning, an act was an event that was finished, but its effect still lingers on within us. And I think that is the same principle which operates when we talk about karma and its effects, even in the case of long-term karmic effects. So it is on that basis we can understand how karma can create effects which are felt even after a long time after the act was committed. And in the Buddhism, according to Buddhist explanation, of course, the sort of impact of karma could be felt in successive lifetimes as well. Now here, I feel that unless we sort of complement the general explanation of the karmic process in the mainstream Buddhist literature from Vajrayana literature, I don't think our understanding will be comprehensive or complete, because in the Vajrayana tradition, there is an appreciation that not only the physical world, but also the world of the sentient being, we are all sort of composed of the 5 elements.
sentient beings
the body of the sentient beings. All of us comes from the same material substance. We are all composed of the 5 elements, the earth, water, fire, wind, and the space. And there is, in the Vajrayana literature, discussion of external elements and internal elements. And there is also...
The space literature is 가서 지상에 부가 나가서 대학 뉘제가 나가서 뉘메시가 나가 니시도 왔다 안 뉘제 나가시고 왔다.
So this space here should be understood in terms of the vacuum, the empty space, rather than space in the technical sense of absence of obstruction. So in the Vajrayana literature, there is an understanding of the existence of external elements and the internal elements, and how at a very profound level they are related to each other. So maybe through understanding that relation, one can try to understand in a deeper way the way in which our karma affects the world.
자, 다 셰바슬라베는 그런 정신이 되듯이. 아니, 다 셰발이야. 코라를 링링이 중앙만 건도 마소네. 규밀이게 두고 말해 수진리게 가오래. 사실 내가 토하는 전에 경험이 좀 거야. 경험 고샤도 가고 싶지 않은 거야.
So as we discussed earlier, the fact that consciousness exists is a natural fact. The consciousness exists, that is it. And similarly, in terms of the continuum of consciousness, it is again a natural principle. Consciousness maintains its continuity. And according to Buddhism, and there is an understanding that consciousness cannot come into being from nowhere. It cannot come into being without a cause. And also, matter cannot produce consciousness. Consciousness does not come out of matter. Therefore, since consciousness cannot come into being without cause, and since
닭진도 시골 받고 닭진시하다, 그 미진시하다 시골 받디 코로코라 세리 뭘 끼야디 코랑기 린디 균식 때문에 코라 그들이 세리 잡는 끼야기 느버지기 때문에 용과하지 마도 그 있는 수생션에 가고 살으셔.
So, of course, that is not to say that matter can affect consciousness. Matter can be a sort of a condition for the arisal of consciousness. But in terms of actual continuum of consciousness, matter cannot produce consciousness. Because when we are talking about consciousness, the nature of consciousness is this mere luminosity, mere experience, knowing faculty, and that cannot be produced from matter. So since consciousness cannot come into being from no cause, nor can it come into being from material cause, therefore consciousness must come from a sort of a ceaseless continuum. And it is, on that premise, Buddhism accepts the existence of beginning, sort of, former lives. Similarly, we also find a lot of individuals who have very clear and vivid memories of their past lives. So when we talk about the origin of suffering, the sources of suffering, although there are karma and delusions, but the primary cause or the principal cause or origin of suffering really is the delusions. So and it seems that depending on different interpretations of the fundamental Buddhist doctrine of anatma, no soul theory, it seems there is also differences in understanding the nature of klesha, nature of afflictive emotions and thoughts.
Pena dumdo wome, pena rangjiwa menshengi, lo tunjuli tsiya, tenjuwe, da che tangche mingi takzamgi, tenjung chamu digi namshaagi, ki tuane tabi ina, eni tab nyumu yinda. Rangjiwa menshengi tabi ina, lo tunjuli tsiya, jinde yungu yubari.
For example, that it seems that certain states of mind or certain thoughts and emotions which, according to, say, Madhyamaka Svatrantika schools or Swatrantika or Chittamatra schools, a state of mind or emotion which they may consider to be non-delusive, non-delusory. But from the point of view of Madhyamaka Prasangika's understanding of anatma or no soul doctrine, they would see that as again being delusory. Of course, this is a very complex point and would require a lot of study.
So now the important thing is that afflicted emotion, afflicted emotion is the ultimate enemy or the source of suffering. And also that is the afflicted emotion, once it develops within our mind, it immediately destroys our peace of mind. And eventually it destroys our health. And also it destroys our friendship with other people. So all these negative activities, such as killing, or bullying, cheating, all these negative actions come out of this afflicted emotion. So that's the real enemy. That's the destroyer of our peace, destroyer of our fortune, and including our health. So therefore, that's the enemy, real enemy. External enemy today may be harmful to you, but next day may be very helpful. But this is the inner enemy, always remain as a destructive. And moreover, that enemy, wherever you live, always there. That is very dangerous. External enemy, we can put some defensive measure. And also, like 59, we escaped. So we can escape. But there is this enemy, even whether in Tibet or whether in Potala, whether in Dharamsala, whether here in London, enemy. Wherever I go, this enemy there. Even I think some kind of meditation, some kind of visualization of mandala. Still, in the very center of the mandala, that enemy is still there. So this is the point now. We have to realize that. Now the question, so you see the real destroyer of our happiness, always there. How to do now? If there is, no possibility, if there is no possibility to overcome that, to eliminate that, then I think better forget. And I think relying more alcohol, sex, all these things, much better. If there is possibility to eliminate that, then I think now we must take this good opportunity. This is human body, human brain, human good heart. Combine these two things. Try to reduce that and eventually eliminate. So therefore, according to Buddhist teaching, our human body is precious. Why? Because of human intelligence. And it is shaping or it is changing our mind, not only through emotion, but mainly through intellectuals, reasoning. And there are two kinds of emotion. One emotion without any reason, just as a feel, such as hatred or these things. Of course, there are superficially some reasons, or this person is very harming on me, and then through that kind of analyze, you develop hatred. But in deep down, further goes, there's not much, reasons. So these emotions, without proper reasons. That's the negative emotion. And the other kind of emotion, such as compassion, altruism, a kind of emotion, but with reasons. And to further investigate, you can prove that is something good, that is something necessary, that is something useful. So that kind of emotion is also the type of emotion, but very much validated, very much go well with reasons or intelligence. So the combination, intelligence and emotion, that is the way to change our inner world. So that also, I think, the basic fundamental, the suffering nature. So long that enemy there, so long we are under that enemy's control, no permanent happiness. So once you develop some kind of keen desire to overcome that enemy, now that is the
so that is called, that is the true realization of the aspiration to seek freedom, which is technically called renunciation in the Buddhist language.
So you see, this practice, they analyze our emotional level and our inner world is the very important, is the key practice.
Scriptures say that so far as the desire to overcome sort of obvious sufferings, evident sufferings, which is the first level of suffering of suffering, so far as the desire to overcome that level of suffering is concerned, even the animals have that natural desire. And so far as the aspiration or the desire to free oneself or overcome the second level of suffering, the suffering of change is concerned, this is not something that is unique to the Buddhist path. Even non-Buddhists
and many ancient Indian non-Buddhist thought, it is similar.
Similar quest.
Inner tranquility through samadhi. So these the practitioner also fully realize the sensational happiness or pleasure is ultimately
unsatisfying,
unsatisfied and no use. So that desire can develop. Now they maybe I think unique or I don't know. That is the Kyawadoji Tunge. Shisi nyumombe shangwando yeba tisidu dawayo mare se da di mwenzibe tane nyumole kedapchi da tabatin yoro gande.
So the true aspiration to seek liberation from suffering or liberation from samsara or to achieve moksha, it can only arise from a recognition of the third level of suffering, that is the dukkha of conditioning, where there is a recognition that so long as we remain under the domination and control of ignorance and the delusions, we are subject to suffering. There is no room for lasting joy and happiness. So based on that recognition, then one can truly develop a genuine desire to seek liberation or to seek moksha.
So now this is the third noble truth. What is nirvana? What is moksha? Or what is nirodha? Cessation. It is something possible or not? Now, that's the key question now.
So this relates, of course, to the third noble truth, that is the truth of cessation or moksha. Now, when talking about the truth of cessation or liberation or moksha, if we were to say that we must accept the existence, the possibility of attaining moksha, because Buddha talked about moksha in the scriptures. I don't think that is satisfactory.
남들 나라리야 아니 다 남들 나리네 제 다 좋아하는 분들이 양다 디 쉽게 배중 나라리야 아니 동반이 있을 때야디 중세 고주를 있어 신도 고주 잘 시작이야 말이야 짜바체 리베 짜바체는 니주도 시작이야 리베 짜바체는 시주도 시작 도주도 시작 그래서 와 있는 산에 통문주도 말이지 니 중세 고주 대전에 리베 보주도 되지
Here perhaps it is useful to reflect upon a point which Aryadeva makes in his 400 verses on the middle way, where he argues that when we talk about the ultimate nature of reality, the emptiness, we must understand that emptiness is not something, the understanding of which requires reliance on scriptural authority. It is something that we can approach through a critical analysis, through reasoning, and understand it. So emptiness, understanding of emptiness, or can arise from through a process of understanding, through reason. Therefore, in Buddhism, there is an understanding that within the phenomena which are evident to us, obvious to us, of course, we can perceive them directly. There is no need for any logical sort of proof. And then there is a second type of second category of phenomena, which, although may not be obvious to us, but we can infer them through based on our own direct perception of something. So we can infer them. These are technically known as the category of the slightly obscure phenomena, but they are not completely obscure because we can infer them, we can approach them through a reasoning process. So emptiness belongs to that category. And since emptiness belongs to that category, which is to say that emptiness could be approached through a reasoning process, that we can infer the truth of the emptiness. Therefore, we must also accept that moksha or liberation is something that can be understood through that process as well. Because as Nagarjuna says that a true understanding of moksha should be based on an understanding of emptiness, because moksha is nothing other than the total elimination or total cessation of delusion and suffering within emptiness or through the insight of emptiness. So understanding of moksha, the concept of moksha, is very much related with the concept of the Buddhist concept of emptiness. And since emptiness can be approached and understood through inferential process, similarly, moksha should be also should be capable of being understood or approached through the similar rational process. Because of this sort of intimate connection between the Buddhist concept of emptiness and the Buddhist concept of moksha, in Abhisamaya Alamkara, which is a classical text written by Maitreya, when talking about the third noble truth, the truth of cessation or nirodha, there is an extensive discussion of the 16 types of emptiness, 16 classes of emptiness.
이네다 타바다 독립이 가서 그래. 다 독립 담담담을 더 되는데 나와서 싶는 세우시고 싶은 거.
So the fact that emptiness is an ultimate, the fact that moksha or liberation is an ultimate truth is something that is very explicitly discussed in Chandrakirti's writing.
자, 근데 고된 여도 메시아데 다 독립이 잡아채는 뒤도하는 다 고된 중국이야.
So it seems that whether or not one can accept the possibility of moksha or liberation seems to be dependent on how well we understand the Buddhist concept of emptiness.
Some questions? 안다 들으시면 돼요. 양아직다는데 주시도 차가 차고.
We have to finish this session at 11:30.
제가 잠깐. 단 question answer 제가 내도서 샤가.
So I'm wondering whether I should carry through my explanation, presentation, or deal with the question and answers.
The question answer prefer 생기라고 정다.
Those who would prefer to have a question answer now, if you can raise your hands.
다 어느 무슨 샤비나?
So those who prefer to have continued presentation.
Oh, this majority. You win now. So I think the evening session I will try to answer. So another 15 minutes I will speak. I will
Continue now.
Continuously. 나 똥반이 있어야 돼. 그래서 말했을 바이나 똥반이 있어야 돼. 똥 있어야 돼. 매백게 시거다. 지금 똥. 다가나 신기 다 매봐. 슬럽디에 다 있어야지 매봐. 다가다 매배지는 시행이야.
So when we talk about the Buddhist concept of emptiness, of course it is obvious that we are talking about absence of something. We are talking about a form of negation. Similarly, when we talk about the Buddhist doctrine of anatman, or no soul, no self theory, again we are talking about a form of negation, a form of absence.
대 연구하도 가렸을나? 배랑 안서 3년 날이야. 지 가서 그러면 레더로 지게 돼야지리야. 배는 지 셔나를 지게 돼서 그들이야. 다 든든다 말에 대 실라베이나. 다 중심으로 돼 안 되지도 한다. 야 말에 사실 좀더 타져베이나. 아니 셔나이네 저이네 이자로고 다 좀더 치버려. 다 누가 하니? 요하면 누가.
So why this insistence on this absolute negation? Either it is in the case of no self, anatman doctrine, or in the case of Buddhist doctrine of emptiness. Why this insistence on categorical rejection or categorical negation? Here, let us pause for a while and think about our own experience. For example, if we have a certain fear based on some kind of suspicion that there might be something here, then in order to dispel that fear, if we have the thought that maybe I'm being kind of deceived, maybe I'm being kind of projecting, maybe I'm projecting, then of course, although it will lessen your fear, but it wouldn't completely dispel it. But on the contrary, instead, if you develop the thought that this is pure illusion, there isn't anything here, I'm just imagining, and if your rejection or negation is that categorical, of course it will have an immediate impact on dispelling your fear.
다 워낙 가를 똥바래. 가를 매버서 쓰고 슬라베이나. 아니 각자 똥 슬라베. 다이네 각자 슬라다 과하시면 누가. 다오는 각자 근지를 슬라나.
So the question is, if that is the case, what is being negated here? What is it empty of? What are we talking about being emptied of? What is being negated here? Of course, the scripture says, it is an absence of the object of negation. We are negating something that is the object of this apprehension. And then it itself is not, not explanatory. So, of course, we have to go further and try to understand what is this? What is the actual object of negation?
No. 다 될이야. 다 낭배 슝나로리야. 강사랑 이제 되게 제일 동에 담이 직시. Then, Songzi Nidung, Kazoda, Songzi Nidung Dami Jikshe. Umen Shungu Nalole, Lodnemela, Suksog Turn, Rangzan, Naya Jik Yevshe. Rangzan, Talodnemelia, Naya, one key, any pata.
So here, we can see that the key really lies in our understanding of what is meant by Atman in the context of Anatman. And of course, depending upon one's own philosophical interpretations of this Buddhist doctrine, the Buddha's teaching on Anatman, or there will be differences in the identification of what is being negated here, the Atma in the context of negation. So what we find is in the Buddhist literature, there are varying degrees or varying subtleties in one's identification of this Atman, the object of negation. For example, this one level is where this Atman is identified as substantially real sort of soul that exists within all of us. And so the negation of that substantially real autonomous sort of agent or eternal soul is the meaning of Anatman. So that is one interpretation of the principle of Anatman. Then there is also another interpretation of that doctrine, which is the Chittamantra way of understanding it, where there is an acceptance that there is an understanding that the fundamental ignorance is not so much the belief in this substantially real eternal soul principle, but rather it is an acceptance or a belief in the reality of the physical world. And there is this understanding that the fundamental ignorance is the belief in the duality of mind and matter. And so the object to be negated in the context of Anatman is this belief in this duality of mind and matter. So that is another interpretation of the doctrine of Anatman. Then there is, of course, the Madhyamaka Svatrantika understanding of emptiness, where there is an understanding that although things come into being as a result of causes and conditions, and although sort of much of the status of existence is in some sense dependent on our perception, but still there is sort of some kind of intrinsic reality to the things and events. And that is, so what is being negated here is in some sense the independence of objects from the perception. So the negation of that is the emptiness. But from the point of view of Madhyamaka Prasangika school, even that is not the final meaning of the Buddhist teaching on Anatman. From the Madhyamaka Prasangika's view, so long as we have not deconstructed or dismantled this notion of any intrinsicness, a notion of any objectivity to the status of things and events, and then we are still grasping at things as real and things as objectively existent, things as enjoying some kind of independent status. So what is being negated in the context of the doctrine of emptiness is the intrinsic reality, the intrinsic existence and identity of things and events. And the negation of that is the subtle meaning or the true meaning of the doctrine of emptiness. So we see here, depending on one's own interpretation, philosophical interpretations of the Buddhist teaching on Anatman, you have varying or differing understanding of what is to be negated.
Did Tamik Dusu Mendra Didi 가소래 디드 창말라기 아니 당진의 뉴트브지 제바도 첩지 랜드기 아니 가소래 그게 랜드가 남산 줘야리야 만들지 디 시작하고 셔
So all what is common to,
개첨불지요
what is common to all these four schools, which have differing interpretations of the Buddhist teaching on emptiness or anatman, what is common to all of them is to bear in mind that while we are engaged in a task to counteract the force of our grasping at Atman, our grasping at the self, it is also important to ensure that our negation does not defy the reality of the conventional world, the reality of our lived world of experience, that the karmic world and karmic operations are not destroyed by the negation. There is an understanding that the causality, the world of causality, should not be negated in the process of our understanding emptiness.
나 동번이 그 단다에 지시듯이 내가 렌트야지다 동번이 내가 잡아도 첩지 아니 레던 데뷔 땡진 잡을 좀 정신래 내가 달라도 렌트야 돼다네 가서래 텐주의 중에 송셔야 돼다 숙시시셔야 돼.
So it seems that in terms of arriving at a philosophical standpoint and a form of sort of analysis that would enable the individual to not only be thorough and sort of complete in one's analysis of negating Atman and arriving at emptiness, but at the same time ensuring that the world of interdependence, the world of dependent origination, the world of karma and the world of pratitya samuppada is not destroyed, but in fact, on the contrary, reaffirmed. It seems that Madhyamaka Prasangika's understanding of the doctrine is perhaps the most successful here.
So that is our gobulujugi zawashim na zongde ade tension level jungwakang tene tongbanyi to shares.
Here, it may be useful to reflect on a very important passage from Nagarjuna's fundamental treatise on the middle way, Madhyamaka Mula Karika, where he states that that which is dependently originated, I call that empty.
tene takwa des. That tension level jungwa imba gyunze to chedi. Any tongbanyi resete adi kan imba de tene takwa des.
And that is in turn dependently designated. So the idea is that whatever is dependently originated is empty in the ultimate sense, and that empty phenomena are dependently designated.
So today indu ko tene takwa resete meba marwa tene tane yorwa ko tene takwa inza ngoni ji modubers lebdu ko rangshini duba maresudwa dini ume lamino tani sigdwa.
So the fact that things and events are dependently designated implies that they are not non-existent, they are not mere nothingness. So what we find here is the way in which understanding of pratitya samuppada, dependent origination, and the understanding of emptiness together enables the individual to tread the middle way, thus avoiding the extremes of absolutism and nihilism.
tene takwa sayagi sikdaga chigogi koya nalariya tene slabdu temati tebati koyungduga shiduzane teba mebe rawa chawadi koyungduga ta slabduzane meba mari yorba tene takwa kone juba takde yorba jubdene shikdo.
So this Madhyamaka expression dependently designated has a deep significance, because the first part of the expression, dependently, sort of implies that things and events come into being by dependence on other factors, which means that they do not possess independent existence. They do not possess some kind of autonomous, absolute status of existence. They come into being only as a result of dependence upon causes and conditions. So that first part of the expression negates absolutism. So the second part, which is of the expression, which it says designated, implies that they are not mere nothingness. They are not non-existence. They do exist. So that part of the expression ensures that the reality of the phenomenal world is not destroyed.
자상가 부터벌리든 알로리아 뭐니기 좀나 때내다고 지샤스. 때려도 뭐니기 좀이나 때내다고 하는 거.
So therefore Buddha Palida states in his commentary on Madhyamaka Mula Karika, he states that if things and events exist with independent existential status, that they come into being without dependence on other factors, then why are the designations dependent? Why there is this dependent designation, interrelated designation?
다나 그렇게 해서 나다 physics 나로네 quantum physics 쉐이잖아요. reality 사디 쉐카우도스 가셔 됐어도.
It seems that sort of related to this point, it seems through speaking with various physicists, I was told that in according to the quantum mechanical understanding of the physical world, they are beginning to have problems of in fact postulating this idea of reality. Even reality as a concept is becoming a problem.
자, 따디기 자인도 전에 뭐니 버디 따다 세버와.
So what does this, for me, what is it points towards is the difficulty of finding, or it's the problems of finding essences when we searched sort of into the essence of things.
다야 나 셰베 참난 짱짱을 슬럽나? 디 지도만 들어가면 되요.
However, if we jump into the other extreme and say that this is pure illusion and everything is just mere projections of the mind, then we will be falling into the trap of where the Chittamatras fell, which is total mentalism.
So 다와나 아니 셰베 머신 멤버지. 다 셰베 머신 소리다. 셰베 낭사 좀 뭐임바. 애는 그런 거 컨디 샤워를 슬럽나? 겐 척배 왕. 규진 땐지 두머씩 손에 팔라 저거 축도랑 차다. 되는 땐중 동버 셔서.
So now the question is that things do not possess intrinsic realities. Things do not possess objective, independent, existential statuses. Yet at the same time, we are not happy with the conclusion that everything is mere projections of the mind. So the question is, where is the middle way? Where what is the alternative? So here, Madhyamaka say that things and events come into being purely as a result of aggregations of many factors. And it's on the basis of that aggregation of causes and conditions and many factors, then we impute identities upon that aggregation.
So now, no time for meditation. So while you are eating or meditate something about shunya. Thank you. See you again.
Listening to you is a joy.
In part 4 of these teachings, the Dalai Lama continues the discussion of emptiness, the recognition that persons and things have no intrinsic reality of their own, that grasping at an objective self and world leads us to suffering, and that critically seeing through its supposed intrinsic reality leads to freedom or enlightenment. But even if we recognize intellectually that this is the case, uprooting the false view of reality from the depths of our consciousness is a difficult task. How difficult? Well, you'll hear the Dalai Lama using the word aeons when talking about it, though he also encourages us that meditation can greatly accelerate the process. The fourth noble truth is the path that leads to nirvana, to the cessation of suffering. The Dhammapada tells us that the path consists of right understanding, right thoughts, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. The Dalai Lama explains that, looked at from the Madhyamaka Prasangika point of view, no matter how you analyze the path, it comes down to the deepening understanding of emptiness and ultimately to its direct intuitive realization. In order to come to this stage, however, it's necessary to prepare the ground by proceeding in order along the three paths: the path of accumulation, the path of application, and the path of seeing. The path of accumulation is the stage of analyzing the philosophy of emptiness and coming to the conclusion that it must be the correct way to understand reality. The path of application refers to the stage where the individual attains some experiential knowledge of emptiness in meditation. But the path of seeing is when there is the intuitive realization of emptiness directly, and then gradually the afflictions, in increasing subtlety, are abandoned at their root totally and completely. So the deepening realization of emptiness is at the heart of the Buddhist path, and this must be brought about by the union of one-pointedness of mind, or shamatha in Sanskrit, with this insight into the true nature of reality, or vipassana, critical seeing. Without one-pointedness of mind, there can be no progressively deepening insight, because without strong concentration, how can insight progressively arise? And without an ethically sound way of life, how can there be any real development of one-pointedness of mind? If one's actions weigh heavily on one's conscience, they will impede the ability to concentrate. And finally, without a genuinely deep compassion, how can there develop an ethically sound way of life? As the Dalai Lama points out, compassion is the foundation of the Buddha's teaching. In Mahayana Buddhism, bodhicitta, the spirit of enlightenment, is the will to attain enlightenment for the benefit of others. Returning to the first noble truth, the truth of suffering, the Dalai Lama reflects that it is the profound understanding of suffering that makes us genuinely compassionate first to ourselves and then to other human beings. As long as we see ourselves as different, as long as we see ourselves as separate, there can be no genuine feeling of compassion. It's only when our compassion is born out of a completely honest sense of equality with all others, enemies and opponents included, that we begin to be capable of walking the paths of freedom to reach the goal. So here now is the final chapter in this remarkable series of teachings on the Four Noble Truths.
자상가 나 동ning 주지기 riba mangu yungu yare das riba kyavo tenjung tenjisla bare.
We were talking about emptiness during the last session, and when it comes to the exposition of the Buddhist doctrine of emptiness, we find in the literature there is a lot of various forms of reasoning, or various forms of reasoning to try to arrive at the understanding of emptiness. And among all of these different forms of reasoning, the reasoning based on the understanding of dependent origination of things is considered to be the most effective.
나 tenjung기 코와 지집에 차야 돼. 패지 나타고 중지 나타고다 무더벌이 중지 세시 인사리.
And in order to have, I think, to develop the most profound understanding of the meaning of the Buddhist doctrine of dependent origination, or pratitya samuppada, I think perhaps the literature, the works of Buddha Palita and Chantakriti seem to be very critical, very important.
So dan nge de sha de shu da mang she di jerm shi sum shi sha jing she de yo re de jerm shi sum di bet ke che yong so ba di yang na Buddha Palita yang na da zo ba da da cha be da shung kan yo ro ji ka so re da shung de kong su chang ni do sha ji ja sa ba sha re de so yin zane a de nge sha do se.
So much of my own understanding, and also, of course, the presentation here on topics of dependent origination and topics of emptiness is based on Lama Tsongkhapa's exposition and presentation of these topics. And Lama Tsongkhapa's own presentation is very much based on the reading of Nagarjuna by Chantakriti and Buddha Palita, so much so that almost every crucial points in his understanding of these concepts or of these principles, Tsongkhapa substantiates by referring to the works of Buddha Palita and various commentaries of Chantakriti.
Zan di shi ga and za shi na la ya any 大概是不是你说这些呢？就是这早些的话，都上大门口头里啊，你看唐国的这样的杨老主任，等杨老主任都送下个什么第一代，第什么可是你说什么呢？陈爱伟，杨老主任送下的什么的，什么说什么的，做什么的，真对，还是说什么的什么的。 但你谈过的对待，但呢，让去找也不对，第一节了呀，俺的让去拍你收不是，你收不是没着，现在我在电脑里呀，因为人性面呢，因为讲个老说话，因为take嘛的，但当然电视take嘛的，但当然因为就是 take嘛的，现在。 我们出这么个，这么个是不得了呀？怕，因为看那个出这么个问题，因为怕，但何说嘞？但难解要的是，看那难解要的是呢，出这个样的用说的怕烂的，怎么怕烂的？因为这样的，实但你因为电中国的肯定是么的，休息到晒不长的。
My own understanding of Chantakriti and Buddha Palita's interpretation through Tsongkhapa's understanding of interdependent origination through Buddha Palita and Chantakriti is based on the reading of the 23rd chapter of Madhyamaka.
No. No. Buddha Palita da the 6세 다 죽어라는 사람들이 때는 가가지, 때는 가이나.
Sorry, I start again. When I'm studying Nagarjuna's Madhyamaka Mula Karika, which is the fundamental treatise on the middle way, I combine the 23rd chapter, which deals
most
with...
probably the 23rd.
Probably it's the 23rd, but it's the chapter that deals with the 12 links of dependent origination. I combine the study of that chapter with the 18th chapter, which deals with the Buddha's understanding of the doctrine of anatman, no soul theory, and then these two. So in the 18th chapter, it principally deals with the understanding of the Buddhist doctrine of no soul or no self theory, and how grasping at such Atman, this eternal principle, this substantially real soul, binds us in the unenlightened existence, and how negation of that, how overcoming of that, elimination of that grasping leads to liberation. And so my understanding of these two chapters are combined. So the point of that chapter, particularly the 18th chapter, is to outline or underline the critical importance of the need to gain insight into emptiness. And then study of these two chapters are then combined with the 24th chapter, in which Nagarjuna entertains various objections from the realist schools, the principle of which being, these are Buddhist realists.
다 가야 해서 넘겨야 되게 가서 조질래서 다 정신면은 엔다 지 단다 메덴다 상당에다 샤스면 되지 다 뒤져가 좀 만만 잡아 들어 만만 잡아디 다스 잡아 말아 삼도 쉬우 땅네 잡아 줘요 거야 이 잡아지 거 살에 제리야 아니 파래 때문에
So in the
랜 때문에 간다 내 정신을 봤어야 돼 땡중 그런 정신을 봤어요 그다
So in the 24th chapter, Nagarjuna anticipates objections from the Buddhist Buddhist schools. The central point of their objections is that if there is no intrinsic reality, if there is no intrinsic existence and identity to things and events, then there is nothing. Therefore, there cannot be Four Noble Truths. If there are no Four Noble Truths, there cannot be the three jewels. If there are no three jewels, then there cannot be the path. Therefore, there cannot be anything. There cannot be a path to enlightenment. To which Nagarjuna responds, actually by turning, as it were, reversing the sort of criticism towards them. It's almost like turning the objections towards them by saying that, on the contrary, if things exist with intrinsic identity and intrinsic reality, then the consequences that you have charged to me would follow. If things do possess intrinsic reality and objective reality and intrinsic reality, then there cannot be Four Noble Truths. There cannot be causal processes. The cause cannot produce effect, and so on. So the central message that comes from that chapter is to demonstrate that what Nagarjuna means by emptiness is not a mere nothingness, not a mere non-existence. His emptiness should be understood in terms of interdependent nature of reality, that things are devoid of independent existence. They possess dependent origination, and it is the very fact of their dependent nature that they are absent of independent existence.
저자가 별이 다 니자가 들이야 소리 캐바치 공기 동바 시저 전세에 동배 되미 댐배데 동바 시저 사야지 동바 시저 전시 가서요 at the last 동바 시저 전세에 그러잖아 that just 동바 시저 전세에 동배 되미서 동바 시저와 전진 누베 동배 되 말이지 동바 시저 전세에 동배 되미 댐배데 야제 땡중 시저人性就准备되미 규매주 지시 동的땡중기 자들 레벨 내봐나 시직라는 낭동이 민게도 몇지거스
one of the sort of recent masters of Tibetan Buddhism, I think he was
another
around,
amdo
I think he was around the turn of this century, sort of early 20th century Tibetan Amdo master. By the way, he's from the same native. He stated in a beautiful, he articulated this point in a beautiful verse. He said that empty here in this context does not mean the absence of functionality. And what then is the meaning of emptiness? It is the empty it is the emptiness of real existence or absolute existence. Dependently originated. Dependently originated does not entail intrinsic reality or intrinsic identity. What it does entail is a phenomenal reality, like illusion-like phenomenal reality. So when you understand the meaning of emptiness and dependently originated, then you will be able to posit simultaneously within one locus the idea of emptiness and appearance without contradiction. Similarly, the same master said that it is common to all philosophical schools to try to talk about, try to sort of describe their own position as avoiding the extremes of absolutism by talking about some form of emptiness, and avoiding nihilism by talking about the level of phenomenal reality. But when you reverse that, it is only when you reverse the process that you will be able to overcome all forms of clinging. So that is the Madhyamaka Prasangika's position, of course. From the point of view of Madhyamaka Prasangika, it is the appearance that liberates the person from grasping onto absolutism. And it is the emptiness, once you understand the true meaning of emptiness, that liberates the person from falling into nihilism. Earlier I spoke about there being a difference between, even within the Madhyamaka school, two different understandings of the concept of emptiness. I spoke about how Madhyamaka Svatranthika's view differs from the Madhyamaka Prasangika's view. The basis for accepting this difference comes from Bhavaviveka's writing, where Bhavaviveka, one of the chief disciples of Nagarjuna, subjects the Buddhist realist schools to very critical examination and sort of argumentation. And at the same time, he also criticizes Buddha Palita's reading of Nagarjuna. So through these two different criticisms directed at two different schools, one can see that Bhavaviveka's position emerges from these critical processes. And the essence of his position is that although absolute existence is denied, but there is an acceptance of some form of intrinsic reality, some form of objective reality to things and events, which is totally rejected by the Madhyamaka Prasangika. So even among Madhyamaka Prasangika masters like Chandrakirti, so although both Chandrakirti, Buddhapalita and Bhavaviveka, these are great disciples of Nagarjuna, we see that there is a substantial philosophical difference in their understanding of Nagarjuna's philosophy of emptiness. And it's because of this difference, Tibetan sort of Buddhist scholars sort of understand that there is a true division within the Madhyamaka school and give them the label Madhyamaka Svatrantika school and the Prasangika school. One of the bases for such distinction is that there seems to be quite a big difference in their adoption of method as well. In the Madhyamaka Prasangika school, there's a much greater emphasis on using what is called the consequentialist style reasoning, which is more like kind of reductio absurdum, where you are not so much trying to, you are not so much using reason to affirm something, but rather you are concerned more with showing internal inconsistency within a particular opponent's standpoint. Whereas Madhyamaka Svatrantikas tend to use much more syllogistic type of reasoning to establish kind of some form of positions. And so, given this difference, there is also a fundamental difference between Bhavaviveka and Chandrakirti about how our sensory perceptions perceive sort of material objects. To Bhavaviveka, when a visual sort of perception arises, insofar as the appearance of the objective entity is concerned, there is an element of sort of validity there, because Bhavaviveka accepts that things do possess a degree of objectivity, which is then projected onto the perception, which is totally rejected by Madhyamaka Prasangika school of Chandrakirti. So, on this basis, we know that the central point of sort of difference between the two Madhyamaka schools is whether or not one accepts any idea of intrinsicness.
So today in this ane around 지금 믹서기 쉐발이야. 아니 유 강나나야. 아니 딜 텐디네 예베 랑생 철로 달았더니 추셔봐도 뭐 추가 메시가 돼. 추인스가 돼. 자장가 텐디네 두버지 능기할 때 나오는 시 요마레시. 다디도 상상스담이나 말아서 차단으로 깨인잖아요. 차단으로 깨인잖아요. 차단께서 유대 담버 담버 메시는 담버 능기여지 다 안데 디세브 차사와.
The reason why understanding of this subtle point is important is that if one were to relate this point to one's own personal experience, then we can see that when strong emotions arise in us, say a strong attachment or anger, if we examine the sort of the experience of that emotion, we will see that there is underlying that strong emotional response to a particular object or event. There is an assumption that there is something objective, something real out there to which you are holding on, and to which you project qualities of desirability or qualities of kind of undesirability, something that is either attractive or unattractive, and based on what kind of qualities that you project, you feel either attracted to it or you feel repulsed by it. So underlying this strong emotional response is an assumption there is something out there, there is some kind of objective reality, some kind of objective entity with almost like kind of an existential status or being some kind of absolute, some kind of real object. However, if you understand that through your understanding of emptiness, that there is nothing intrinsic, there is no intrinsic reality to things and events, then of course this will automatically give you the understanding that even these emotions, strong emotions, no matter how real and strong they seem, they are baseless. They have no valid ground, they have no valid basis. And once you understand that they are based upon a sort of a fundamental misknowledge or misconception, then the emotions themselves becomes baseless and untenable. Whereas if your understanding of emptiness is not thorough in the sense that it hasn't succeeded in negating any notion of intrinsicness, then of course your attitude towards that kind of emotion will not be the same, because you may feel that that kind of emotion is in some sense valid or justified.
So that 뒤편에 that 차당을 놓게야겠다. 차당을 놓게야기 심어르디 다 유동번이기다. 동번이 그 소리 고아로 야고 샤베이나 뒤니 유근 나다들이 인국이 아래에서 버지 로리아 또 샤레이나 any 신의 르 차다 그렇게도 사도 any emotion 쑥하고 제베 그돌이야 any 르 지나로 그렇게 다도 세 것도는 직도 시트하시도.
So once you have developed certain understanding intellectually,
가다 댄징이 이 차당 르 멍실지 댄징이 치기야 되거든. 직도 시트하시도.
So once you have developed a certain understanding of emptiness, be it intellectual understanding, you will have a certain kind of outlook, a certain kind of orientation towards things and events. And then you can compare that to your own natural responses to events or objects and see how, to a very large degree, a very large extent, often we tend to project things, qualities or things on the objective world, or on the world. And especially we realize that much of the strong emotions that we feel arises from an assumption in something that is unreal, something that is baseless. And so through this way, you may be able to experientially gain some kind of sense that there is a gap, there is a disparity between the way you perceive things and where things really are.
자장가 다들 인도산에 녀몽기 릭디디 아니 잡든 참아매 돼봐. 잡든 참아매 돼봐지. 차이고야래. 녀몽기 짐베 진단텔레 딱답에 친질로 진단 딱답에 친질로 인정해지기 담에도 싫었어야지 기하여 돼봐. 담에도 싫었어야지는 부지여 돼봐. 다 디니부디 찌게 다도 셴 찌게 다 매버 셴댕에 니부디 뭐부 찌글미네 진단 뭐가도 여대봐 인도산에 로니부디 내셔널지 신대버지 세부차 내셔널지 침베 원에 잡된 그 참아 예별로디 콤나 콤바 슉슉 드라이 되버지다 잡된 참아 매댕에디 아니 콤바 가서다 슉슉 드라이 매되버지 디니 원에 덴진 슉충 로트야디 디토네 샤도.
So from all of this, the conclusion that we can draw, or the morale that we can draw from all of this, is the fact that much of our strong emotions, the emotions that afflict our mind, arises from a fundamental state of confusion, which tends to apprehend things as real and things as intrinsically existent or independent. And so we know that these emotions, these afflictive emotions and thoughts, have no valid support, neither in our experience, nor in reality, or nor in reason. In contrast, there is, your insight into the emptiness of things is not only grounded in reason, but also it is grounded in your experience. And there is a valid support. Not only that, but your understanding of emptiness and your grasping at things as real and intrinsic, they are directly opposite to each other. So one harms the other, one destroys the other. And given that they are both opposing forces, given that one lacks any valid support or grounding, whereas the other has, valid grounding in our experience and reason and reality. So the conclusion we can draw from here is that the more we develop our understanding of emptiness, the more we deepen our understanding of emptiness, the greater the power of that insight becomes. It can be enhanced. The more we see through the deception of these emotions, the weaker the force of emotion can become. So the conclusion we can draw is that the strong afflictive emotions and thoughts and their basis, which is this fundamental ignorance, are something that can be minimized, that can be weakened, whereas the opposite forces, the insight into emptiness, is something that could be enhanced.
Any subject vessels at the Dinanji Paji Nanga point Chambush League vessels to her. Sata Chenny Chimalubu Wanita, Yandera and she needing chips. That to GD, any Chimati Kandaka, Janjandi, Luburu Sudioris, Deru Sudioris. Yandenti, Topsog Yandenki, Kia Nubati, Sem Koranga, Vesevetene, usually Nubati, Ranchasuris.
So through our reflections so far, we have arrived at a point where we can conceivably accept that the delusions, the afflictive emotions, and also their basis, which is the fundamental ignorance, is something that we can weaken in its force. But the question now remains whether it is possible at all to completely eliminate it, completely eradicate it, root it out from our mind or psyche. Here, I feel that perhaps reflecting upon sort of some of the points stated in Maitriya's Uttara Tantra, Sublime Continuum, may be very, very critical. According to that text, Uttara Tantra, there is an understanding that so far as the potential for knowing is concerned, it is something that is intrinsic to our consciousness. It is something that is inherent. It is something that is a natural quality of our mind. And whereas all the various afflictions of the mind, the pollutants, these are not really essential part of our mind. They are separable from our essential nature of mind. They are loburua, which means advantages. So when we talk about gaining gaining sort of perfect wisdom of the Buddha, we should not have a notion that we are in some sense sort of creating qualities that are not there from somewhere, from outside. Rather, we should see it more in terms of a potential that is being realized. So the pollutants of the mind comes in the way of the natural expression of the potential that is already inherent in our consciousness. So this, it is as if the capacity to know without obstruction is there in our consciousness or in our psyche, but it is the pollutants that afflicts our mind, which in some sense obscures or hinders our potential to express fully or be developed fully. So once our understanding of the nature of mind is informed by this concept of essential nature of mind as a mere pure luminosity and mere experience or the capacity to know, then by understanding that all the pollutants of the mind, the afflictions of the mind, are something that could be removed, then we can conceive the idea of the possibility of total eradication or elimination of these pollutants.
So that digo taba to yadi, nyomo seruin but to se to sometimes.
So this is how one can sort of conceptualize the possibility of attaining moksha, how afflictions of the mind are capable to be removed, and how liberation can be attained or moksha could be attained.
That the gopati tenlia gopa shiva janum minjuns keshu shishe. That the adachi bangji nyembu top jomni, the that cheve gopa. The nedi any ko mazu pandoy gaba shiva and shima, the janumba. And it tend to never do, usually tend to never do. The that keshu shishe.
So in the scriptures, such moksha or state of liberation is characterized in terms of 4 qualities or 4 features. It is described as the true peace, because that is the state of total tranquility, where the individual has attained a total freedom from all the pollutants of the mind. And it's also described as it's totally satisfying, because you have reached, in some sense, ultimate satisfaction. And it is also described as the definite emergence. You have definitely emerged from the unenlightened process. Sorry, the first one is the cessation, yeah. So these are the 4 features, being cessation, which is the true cessation of all suffering and the continuum of afflictions, cessation, peace, true peace, totally satisfying, and definite emergence.
That is about third phenomenon. That if that kind of goal is something very possible, or then now you say how to achieve that. Now that question becomes very important.
So this takes us to the 4th noble truth, that is the true path.
The lamji tempa setiadi thagi ganda shediagi toni musum to tobe lochilia and lamden shelia lamden what am toni musum to lo shelia.
So when we talk about true paths, so when we talk about true paths leading to liberation or moksha, from the point of view of, according to the Madhyamaka explanation, true path should be understood in terms of a direct, intuitive realization of emptiness. That's the true path. And this is the path, this direct, intuitive realization of emptiness would directly lead to the attainment of cessation. But in order to attain such direct intuitive realization of emptiness, one must have the basis, which is sort of a single-pointed meditative experience, sort of experiential knowledge of So when the individual attains that experiential, meditatively, arisen experiential knowledge of emptiness, that is said to be the beginning of, in the Buddhist language, technical language, called the path of linking or path of preparation. And the individual, the point where individual has gained direct intuitive realization of emptiness is said to be the path of seeing. However, the experiential knowledge of emptiness derived from meditative practices, in turn, must be based on an initial intellectual, inferential understanding or cognition of emptiness. Without that, there is no possibility of attaining meditatively based experience of emptiness. So, and that initial stage of developing the inferential cognition of emptiness is part of what is known as the path of accumulation. And the real, I suppose, the threshold of the path of accumulation is the point where the individual practitioner has gained a genuine aspiration to attain liberation, moksha. That is the beginning of the path. However, in order to prepare oneself to embark upon such a path, the path of accumulation, the path of linking, or the path of seeing, of course it requires a lot of preparations, the grounds that needs to be prepared. And so we are talking about now practices at the beginner stage, the initial stage, where the most important practice is the practice of the three higher trainings, the trainings in morality, concentration or meditation, or wisdom or insight.
That the Tagian Shujagi, Zawachi, Lamo, woman, the Lam Komo to there, so in some woman, the Sakoman to there, the Nyamshang and Pashta Shadua. Nyamshang and Potia Shan, so do you to be she Koran, you should never shashi, but Taganata, Lam Komo Pokumari. Chazanga, the nigga Tony Toby Yishiti, Shira will love a change that it's all the Shlasumji. Do you to be Shlasumji in Najoti? Kashurta, Shira will love all the chair. The only things you love to go chair. The only Chanshik too, that chamber the shishing that Toma, Betakaso, Ma Kasur to get Kumjiro, Toma, go to Yagi, and it's Chudumava. That is good.
So, in the scriptures, when the actual processes or the transition from one stage to another stage is described, it is often described in terms of meditators' experience. So, what is important here is to understand that the actual path on which the individual travels is the progressive and deepening knowledge and realization of emptiness. So that is known as the wisdom aspect of the path in the Buddhist technical language. And however, that wisdom, realizing emptiness, must be within the context where there is a union or a combination of single-pointedness of the mind and penetrative insight. So that is the union of shamatha and vipassana. So the true insight into emptiness must be in terms of a union of shamatha and vipassana. And however, in order to develop such true insights into emptiness, where there is a union of the two, of course, you require first to develop shamatha, the single pointedness of the mind, which will then allow you to channel your energy and your concentration. And therefore, single pointedness of the mind or shamatha training becomes key. And in order for the individual to have a successful training in shamatha, two factors are very important. These are application of the mindfulness and application of introspection or mental alertness. And the training in these two would be successful only if your single pointedness of the mind is based on an ethically sound, disciplined way of life, where there is a discipline within your sort of outlook and within your life. So that, of course, we are talking about the importance of morality. So this is how the three trainings are connected with each other, linked with each other.
그게 년도에 택받아 다가는 지금 그게다 정주 선배다 택받아 즉 3월로 투문 냠는 시야 장소 수준만으로 되고.
So all these practices of the three higher trainings, which is elaborated in the Buddhist scriptures, sometimes in the form of what is known as the 37 aspects of the path to enlightenment. These are all practices, all of these practices are common to both the Shravakayana, or the individual vehicle, or the Bodhisattva yana.
다 댐바시만 대셔야 타네 최근조 세야지 용시게 다 최근조 뒷땡갱기 아니 댐바 산지 좀 된데 아니 뒤수시는 중에 저긴 뒤전에 다 겹숨 세야지 즉 쇠버려 차도.
So to sum up, if your understanding of the Four Noble Truths is sort of arises from such reflections, deep reflections, then you will gain deep admiration towards the Dharma, which is the true refuge, and you will also gain develop a conviction in the possibility of actualizing Dharma within yourself, realizing Dharma within yourself. Once you have attained such conviction, then you will be able to develop genuine admiration to the Buddha, the master who showed the Dharma, the path. And if you are able to do that, then you will be also able to develop deep admiration in the Sangha, towards the Sangha members who are your spiritual companions on the path, who are all engaged in this ultimate quest to actualize Dharma, realize Dharma within themselves. So through this way, when if your understanding of the three jewels is based on such profound understanding or reflection on the Four Noble Truths, then when you think about the three jewels, the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, then you will feel that there is a renewed sort of freshness. There is a kind of these three objects of refuge become sort of alive, come into life.
다들 잠도 잤지.
No.
다들 잠도 잤지. 딱 그러니 뭐 잠도 섬진 이거.
So this is what is meant by going for refuge. To sum up, I mean, all of this explanation is to show what is meant by going for refuge in the three jewels.
낭배축이 아니 자와들이 다다 닝지 자와체 산지 때문에 닝지 자와체 디송도아.
Now, based on that understanding of taking refuge, we need to now look at another important perception of Buddhism, where there is an understanding that the entire teachings of the Buddha, the foundation is compassion. The compassion is the foundation of Buddha's teachings.
다 닝지 군을란데 에네 단디샤. 자, 닝지 삼바티 믹스가래 타네. 야 야제다야. 나다 야제다야. 에니 셈 정다균이 다 셈지사리 거래.
So this practice of enhancing one's heart, developing altruistic mind, is aimed at deepening one's understanding of compassion and enhancing the compassionate potential that exists within oneself.
다 장주 sem 고미알이야 아니 타마 땅님 거 봐. 심전 어떤데샤 땅냐라 장주 sem사 그렇지 스워스 라바이나 장주 sem스 돼야디 뭔도 전에 누가 인생 sem스야래. 샤드 되니긴 준비 교체. 장주 되니긴 누가도 충전도 해야 되는 아니 sem질에 장주 sem스야래.
So based on such profound compassion, then one can develop altruistic aspiration to seek enlightenment for the benefit of all. So here, of course, we are talking about the generation of bodhicitta. And so what is meant by bodhicitta? In Maitriya's Abhisamaya Alamkara, bodhicitta, or this altruistic aspiration to attain enlightenment for the sake of others, is described as having two sort of motivating factors. One is genuine compassion towards all sentient beings, and the second one is the recognition of the need to attain full enlightenment in order to fulfill the well-being, welfare of other sentient beings. So in order to develop such bodhicitta, this altruistic mind, we need to develop a sense of responsibility, not just mere compassion towards others, but compassion with a sense of responsibility that you yourself would take upon yourself the task to help others. So this kind of sense of responsibility can only arise if you have generated genuine compassion, spontaneously arisen genuine compassion which pervades all sentient beings, and which is universal compassion. It's not partial, but rather universal towards all sentient beings. And such type of compassion is called great compassion, to distinguish it from ordinary compassion.
Mahakaruna.
So it is called Mahakaruna or great compassion.
That the day Ninjiti Yongalia charging that Dune Kanganare, Dune Mochachi. Nilia Kang Dungajanare, Simjalia, any Jeshipam Lokiach, Nikulu.
So, however, such type of compassion can only arise if you, first of all, have a genuine insight into the dukkha nature, genuine insight into the nature of suffering of oneself and other sentient beings. There is a true recognition of your state of being as a suffering. And not only that, but also there should be a genuine empathy, a genuine sort of connectedness with others, without which compassion cannot arise. So in order to have genuine compassion, you need not only realization of the suffering nature, but also there should be a sense of connectedness with others, other sentient beings, a kind of a natural empathy.
다 동네 사람들이 되게 kontrol해야게 동네 대표도 도균이 님이 사람들 되게 더하네 용야지 대성도 마세베 고과 고된 타바 탑네 시워 처지고 통되나 더동 시리고 짠데 제가 있는데 시고요.
And so far as gaining insight into the suffering nature is concerned, reflection on the first noble truth, the truth of suffering, will assist you in your deepening your insight into suffering. And not only that, but for an altruistic practitioner, it is important to recognize that attaining individual liberation alone is not adequate. Not only is it sort of individualistic, but also, even from the point of view of one's own perfectibility, gaining moksha or liberation alone is not full enlightenment. It is not. It's not a state of full awakening.
Then shendu dani ulo ya delia, simjana lo jeshi pangbe lo tu ya delia, yana, ani malo sobe da, simjana lo malo sobe nyandu, ten, ani chigi nyandu gyube niga tin tanya, dinega tane jeshi pangbe lo tu barisha.
So, one crucial point here, one crucial requirement here is, in order to develop genuine compassion, you need to have a natural empathy and sense of connectedness, with sense of closeness or intimacy with other sentient beings. And one of the ways in which one can enhance this empathy, natural empathy towards others, one of the techniques that is described in the Buddhist scriptures is to imagine or visualize all, sort of develop the recognition that all sentient beings are your mothers, literally your mother. Sort of either as a mother or as someone who's sort of dearest to you, and then extend that perception towards all sentient beings. Through this way, you can develop a sort of a natural, a spontaneous empathy with others. However, such natural empathy towards all sentient beings cannot arise if you have fluctuating emotions towards others, which are based on discrimination. Viewing some as enemies and some as friends. So that fluctuation, that kind of fluctuating emotions based on discrimination has to be first overcome. Therefore, the practice of equanimity towards all becomes crucial. However, there is a different technique described in Shantideva's writings, Bodhisattva Charavatara, Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life, where he explains a way of cultivating genuine empathy towards others, not so much based on recognition of others as your dearest, but rather as a way of developing equality of oneself with others. The fact that just as you yourself wish to be happy and overcome suffering, others too have the similar natural desire. Just as you have the right, others too have the right. So developing that sense of equality and then reversing your sort of perspectives, putting others in your place and then relating to them as dearer to yourself. Through that kind of process of training, there is another technique of cultivating a natural empathy or connectedness towards others. According to the Tibetan meditative tradition, these two different techniques are combined and then meditated upon. So, and the custom is that once, as a result of your reflection and practice and thinking and meditation, if you gain a sort of even a simulated experience of this altruistic mind, this compassion, then the custom is to stabilize that and reinforce that through participating in a ceremony where you explicitly generate the bodhicitta. And then this should be then, for a bodhisattva, should be followed by developing a keen desire to engage in the bodhisattva ideals, activities of the bodhisattva. So once the individual has successfully developed a keen interest and keen wish to engage in the bodhisattva activities of helping other sentient beings, then, according to the tradition, then such a person must take bodhisattva vows from that point. So the bodhisattva ideal, or the activities of the bodhisattva, could be summed up in what could be called the three precepts. One is the precept of refraining from negative actions. And the second one is precept of consciously or deliberately engaging in positive or virtuous actions. And the third one is the precept of helping others.
Now, yang chua shi da shi ta ne debu du zu ta ne xie bei yin na debu la ji jiao dang ta ne xie bei yin na suan na gu chua de ye xi chua ni xie.
And from the point of view of how causal kind of practices lead to a resultant state, bodhisattva practices are sometimes also described in terms of the two accumulations, the accumulations of merit and accumulations of wisdom.
Dinde ge tabshi ni bu de sosu ya ge le shin bei na yang ga le shin bei na de ge ha ma le tab ji sin bei shi ji sin bei tab shi song ji gu ga.
So the accumulations of merit and wisdom are sort of the two aspects of the union, the two elements of the union of method and wisdom. And in the Buddhist path, these two aspects of the path, the fundamental aspects of the path, union and method, method and wisdom, should always be united. They should not be separated.
다디 탑시 숭dunre dang thwa le ya ani nga subjection ne thang ga.
And it is on the practice of the unifying method and wisdom where the profundity and the sophistication of the tantric or vajrayana practice comes or arises.
Tikane islam mibol hogul sen mibol hogul sebe thane mare ta mibol hogul ta ranglu nyala tungni kom ta rang ta nyala tungni kom ni en bet chi nuju ene range bu phungbu ma da bu phungbu samolo ene tongbe yin su pa ka su le long bu ma sha che dene tungni do be lo dini me mo le ya dini 신랑 하고 나나발 샤더사 데네 하고 나발 샤 데베 하고 텔라 미네 서 하이 콜로 텔라 미네 나발 레신 동이에 다 돈이 공부하래 디니 사세 님이 있어야 탑시 님이 시야 디데네
to sort of put it very briefly, one of the unique features of the union of method and wisdom in the Vajrayana teachings is that there the practitioner first subjects all his or her perception of self and the world to an understanding of emptiness and dissolves everything into emptiness. And from within that, and that very cognition or understanding of emptiness is then, of course, at the imaginative level at the beginning, is visualized into a sort of a perfected form of a deity, of a meditational deity. And once you have that visualization of the deity, then you reflect upon, again, the non-substantial or empty nature of that deity. So what you find here is that complete within one instance of a cognition, both aspects of the method and wisdom, there is a visualization of the deity, yet at the same time there is an understanding or there is a comprehension of the empty nature of the deity at the same time. So within one single instance of a cognitive act, you have both the method and wisdom complete.
아니 상아 규지 시셰베 아니 규지 어머니리야 탐지 송야 예와마도 담바라 미세 매버레 나지도 뭐 미세 조시 송 매버레 다 nenjo 규다 nenjo 라미 규니들이야 나지도 뭐 송야 셰버레.
So within the Vajrayana sort of tradition, principally speaking, there are four principal classes of Tantra. The first two classes of Tantra, there is no involvement of taking tantric vows or Vajrayana vows. It is from the Yoga Tantra, and it is in the Yoga Tantra and Anuttara Yoga Tantra, the highest Yoga Tantra, where the individual practitioners takes tantric vows. And in the Anuttara Yoga Tantra, highest Yoga Tantra, then there are various meditative practices which are aimed at utilizing various physiological elements as well, such as visualizing on the energy channels, the energies that flow within the channel, and then visualizing on subtle drops and so on. So the point is, in all of these various types of meditations, the key really is the meditation on bodhicitta, the altruistic aspiration and insight into the emptiness. Without these two factors, none of them would even be considered a Buddhist practice. So, even the tantric practices, the visualization, so long as they are divorced, or devoid of bodhicitta, an understanding of emptiness, they are not even Buddhist practices. However, in very reliable and authentic texts belonging to Yoga Tantra, there is an understanding that Vajrayana path could be also based on the philosophical understanding of emptiness, of a Chittamatra school as well, not necessarily a Madhyamaka. However, I feel that in order to have a comprehensive practice of Tantra, in order to attain full realization of Tantric path, Vajrayana path, I think insight into emptiness based on the Madhyamaka understanding is crucial. So, just as one of the questions, in one of the questions, the point was raised about the difficulty of continuing to practice Tantra. I think it is very true that so long as you are not able to establish a firm grounding in the basic practices of the Buddha Dharma, such as that we have been talking about throughout our sessions, without these groundings and the foundational parts, even supposedly profound practices of the Vajrayana path will have no effect.
So today in the
Therefore, the point is that it is important to understand that for a practicing Buddhist, developing understanding and meditation on the Four Noble Truths is really crucial. Therefore, meditation as a part of your practice becomes really critical. And when talking about meditation, it is important to bear in mind that your meditation should contain both elements of a meditation, both single-pointedness and also an analytic or penetrative.
Then another important factor is determination. And you should not think these development can take place within a few days or few years. We must understand, you see, that these development even may take eons. So you say our determination, if a consider as a Buddhist and want to really practice as a Buddha Dharma, then right from the beginning, you must, you see, make up your mind. Or doesn't matter, even may take millions of billions of eons. Doesn't matter. You see, after all, what is the purpose of our life? The meaning of existence? Nothing. You realize something positive. Then even you see days and months or eon, it is meaningful. If you're really wasting our life, purpose of our life, then even one day, too long. Once you're determined, once you make up your mind, some kind of firm determination and clear objective way, and then time is not important. So they like you see, Shantadeva is one of the, you see, prayer. There's so long space remain, so long sentient beings, suffering remain, I will remain in order to serve. So that sentence really gives me some kind of inner stand, and also I think inspiring. So the more sort of, you see, the impatience, and as I mentioned before, you see, they want something the quickest or best or something, then I think result also poorest, I think. The cheapest method, quickest, cheapest method, result will be poorest. So you see, no. So you see, that's I think wrong. So that I would like to share with you. So that's why you see, I myself, although you see, recite some mantra or you see some visualization, you see certain mandalas, but in my daily practice, although my practice is very poor, but even then, you see, my main emphasis on this Four Noble Truths and Bodhicitta and Karuna. So that really, I feel, is something practical benefit. Then through these practice, you will get something practical benefit. Visualization is big deities. Sometimes I think the cheating oneself. Almost is like is cheating oneself.
Deceiving oneself.
Deceiving oneself. So therefore, I think, you see, we must, you see, practice step by step, and with patience, with determination. Once you involve or dedicated or determined practice, then some improvement you can see. You see, year by year, at least decade by decade, then you can see, oh, at least some change, some improvement you can see. Once you see that, that also gives you some kind of new encouragement. So you see, change, not easy. So as a Buddhist brothers and sisters, that is my talk. And now important thing is, If you consider as a Buddhist, then please implement. Should not remain just on intellectual level. The practice or teaching must be part of our life, And not only Buddhist, but other, you see, the practitioner or believer, say it's a Christian or Muslim or Jews, or whatever way,
Whatever your faith.
whatever your faith. So the faith, if you accept, then must be part of your life. It is not sufficient just in Sunday attend this church and remain like that few moments, and outside nothing there. That is not sufficient. Whether you are physical, whether in your cathedral or not, I think the teaching of your own religion must in your heart always. That's very important. Then you get then you get experience of real value. Otherwise, it's just a knowledge here. When you face some real problem, won't help. There's teaching once become part of your life, then real problem is come contact. Then is that teaching gives you inner strength. And finally, when we become older, old age, and incurable illness, and finally death comes, then you see that is a practice really gives you some kind of inner guarantee. So that's important. After all, death is part of our life. Nothing is strange. Sooner or later, we have to pass that I think sort of main gate. We have to pass through that way. So whether there is a next life or not, at that time, the peace of mind is a very crucial factor. So how to achieve peace of mind at that moment? If you have some experience in your
daily life,
in yourself, that will provide some kind of inner strength. No one else, no deities, no gurus, no other cannot provide. That's why you see Buddha says, you are your own master. So that's very important. Thank you. So then you see,
So after that marvelous instruction on what we all have to do in order to attain enlightenment and liberation, the Dalai Lama himself is a living example that I think we all really need to see. Someone, a living human being who's actually doing this, is not just talking about it. And one always feels when you're in the presence of the Dalai Lama that he is definitely one who is practicing what he's preaching. And just the very spirit behind it, the whole Dhamma comes forth and shines. And we feel tremendous connectedness to His Holiness the Dalai Lama as a living example of the Buddha Dhamma in a living form that we can actually see. And due to his compassion, he makes himself available to us here in the West. And also he's been a great inspiration for all of us here in the United Kingdom, with the network of Buddhist organizations coming together, making some effort to learn how to dialogue with each other, to to cooperate in some generous effort in the true spirit of Buddha Dhamma, as inspired by His Holiness the Dalai Lama. So I have here a gift from the network of Buddhist organizations of this beautiful tanka that's hanging above His Holiness. So I want to offer this, and with all sincere gratitude and appreciation for this wonderful instruction. The Four Noble Truths never fails you. If you practice it, it goes on and on in your life and applies to almost every aspect and every experience that a human being can possibly have. It is a grand and a great teaching, even though it looks relatively simple. In four truths, the whole universe and the experience of liberation is made available to us. I'd like to offer this to His Holiness.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
I'd also like to express gratitude for everyone to Mr. Thubten Jimpa, who's been the translator for the Dalai Lama.
That's awesome. So finish. Thank you. Goodbye.